Hey all! Today you're going to learn how to draw in a beautiful monarch butterfly in an easy step-by-step way. And then I'm going to show you how to paint in this beauty with acrylic paints. We'll finish off the tutorial by creating some fun Q-tip clouds and stars. Alright, let's get started. The first step to draw on our butterfly is to create the body of the butterfly in the center of our canvas, which is going to center our butterfly in the end. Now the body consists of three circular parts, the head, which is a circle, and then the middle part of the body, which is an oval shape, and then the bottom part of the body, which is kind of like an oblong oval. And then you want to draw two antennas at the top of the head. I'm using a simple pencil here to sketch in the butterfly, which makes it easy to erase right on canvas, and that way you can fix your butterfly as you go. Now you're going to draw in two arc shapes on either side of the body, and this is going to be the top part of our butterfly's wings. Next, you're going to draw in the center part of the wing on either side of the butterfly by just drawing two horizontal lines. And finally, you're going to draw two diagonal lines at the bottom part of the body. Now we're going to fill in our butterfly wings, and we're going to start at the top, and we're just going to draw like a squiggly line from the top to the center part of our butterfly line. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Now finally, you're going to draw in two more diagonal lines at the end of the center, and then we're just going to draw in semicircles to connect both of those diagonal lines together. If you're looking to make a symmetrical butterfly, this is the time to make sure both sides of your butterfly look equal. You can take a step back from your canvas or even flip it upside down to find areas that you want to fix. Now that the overall shape of the butterfly is drawn, we're now going to draw in the beautiful patterns on the wings of our monarch. So simply draw in 4 teardrop shapes or flower petal shapes in the center of every wing. So here you want to try to make them as similar in size as possible. Now you're going to draw in 7 lines inside each wing. Each line should be roughly the same distance from each other. And don't worry if your butterfly isn't working out the first time you draw it. Just take your time, be gentle with yourself, and also don't be afraid to use your eraser to fix as you go. I pretty much used my entire eraser on the back of my pencil when I was practicing this butterfly. A little segue into that is a quote my dad used to tell me when I was growing up, which is, "No one is perfect. That is why pencils have erasers." I absolutely love that quote, and I tell it to myself all the time. So remember, don't be afraid to use that eraser, and it's okay if you don't get something right away and it takes you a few tries. The most important thing is to be gentle on yourself, to keep at it, and you will get it. Once you've added in your lines, you're going to create a bubble-like border at the end of each wing. You're going to leave about an inch between the border and the edge of your wing. So you're going to do this for all 4 wings. When I was experimenting and trying to figure out a way to break down this butterfly drawing into an easy step-by-step process anyone can follow, I noticed it was much easier to draw both wings together in unison. I found if I drew each wing separately, like finishing one wing completely and then moving on to the next, it was a little more challenging, and it often was harder to get it to look symmetrical. Now we've drawn most of our butterfly design, and now we're going to be filling it in with our pencil. So first we're going to fill in the bottom horizontal line that separates the top from the bottom portion of the wing, and then we're going to fill in the rest of the border, basically in the last step where we made our bubble border. We had left that inch between the border and the edge of the wing. We're just going to fill that now in with pencil. And this is going to start to bring our design together. And the reason I do this, even though we're going to be painting it in later, it just gives us a guideline of where we're going to fill in our butterfly with the black, and where we're going to have the orange pattern in our butterfly. But if you don't want to fill it in here, you don't have to, but I find it just makes it easier in the later steps when we're going to be painting it in. So the top few sections of the monarch butterfly wings are a little bit different than the bottom ones, and they're a little bit smaller. So we're just going to be creating little ovals in the top three, and then a second design, which is kind of like a reverse letter D. And then we're going to be repeating that on the other side of the wing too. So they're just small little circles, and then here they're going to be, this side is going to look like the letter D. And then in the next step, we're going to be filling in around it, and then you'll see the pattern emerge. So here we're just going to be filling in around our circles and our reverse letter Ds with our pencil, and then you can see the pattern emerge like our beautiful butterfly. Now in the top empty portion of the wing, I just draw little circles on both sides of the wing, and then I'm going to be filling it in like the rest with my pencil around all the circles. I actually found when I got to painting it, it was just easier to fill in this portion with the black and then go over it with white over top to create those circles, but I just left it in the tutorial just to show you, and if you decide not to paint it and you just want to draw a butterfly, then this works as well. Okay, for the final part of our butterfly wings, we're just going to be thickening all of the lines that we made in the first few steps. And this is just going to, again, help us guide where we're going to put our black border or paint our black paint in the next portion of this tutorial. So we're just going to be simply thickening all of the lines, including the teardrop shapes and the outer sections as well, and the ones at the top. So now that we've drawn in our butterfly wings, those are done, and we're just now going to fill in our butterfly body. So the first thing is just going to fill out the top head with our pencil, leaving just a teardrop shape of white, and that's going to be the reflection of light hitting it. And that's going to be, you're going to do that for the middle portion of the body as well. And then for the top, the bottom, the very bottom portion, that oblong oval, we're just going to draw in some horizontal curved lines and then lightly fill it in with our pencil. Yay! Our butterfly drawing is now complete, and now we can move on to painting it in. What I like to do is paint in the background of our butterfly before painting in the butterfly. I find this a little bit less stressful because you can fill in the background and then the butterfly portion goes over top. If you do it the other way around, you do the butterfly first, and then it's a little bit more nerve-wracking to paint the edges close to the butterfly after you've painted it in. Now in terms of brushes, I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush, but feel free to use any large flat brush that you have on hand. And with the paint colors, right now I'm using a mix between fluorescent pink and white. I find the fluorescent pink color is gorgeous, and it's very, very vibrant on its own. And when you combine that fluorescent pink with white, it tints it down so that it's still very vibrant, but a little bit more muted. So I really love using the combination of the fluorescent pink with the white to get a really bright and vibrant pink that's also muted at the same time. But if you don't have fluorescent pink, then you can use any pink that you have at home, and you can lighten it up with your titanium white. And when applying it close to the border of the butterfly, I'm using the chiseled edge of the flat brush, which is why I'm using the flat brush to paint in the border, because that flat edge makes it super easy to cut around corners and around borders. And so using that flat brush is going to be much easier to paint in and around your butterfly. Now you can use the flat brush to cut around most of the butterfly, but I found when I was getting near the head, the top of the head, I actually switched to a small round brush because it was a little tricky to get to those little corners between the wing and the head using the flat brush. So feel free to switch up to a smaller round brush if it's getting a little bit tough to get in those corners. And you don't have to worry too much about getting the borders between the butterfly and your background perfect here. It can even overlap over top of your butterfly, and that's fine because we're going to be painting in our butterfly in the next step over top of the background. So even if you get a little bit of it on it, no worries. Just here we're just going to get our background on as best as we can, and then we'll paint in our butterfly in the next step. So you're going to fill in the background with this light pink until about the halfway point on your canvas. And then I've created a little bit darker shade of this pink by adding a little bit of the brilliant purple I have above on my palette in with that original light pink that I had mixed to begin with, and it creates just a slightly darker version of that lighter pink. And so we just want to create a little bit of a gradient, so we want to go from a light pink to a little bit darker pink, then over to our purple. So but this is also optional. If you want to go straight from the pink to the purple, that's the light pink to the purple, that's fine as well. But I like the look of having the lighter pink kind of graduate to a little bit darker pink and then to the purple. And here I've grabbed some of that darker pink and I'm applying it on the canvas. And I'm using the same chiseled edge to get as close as I can to the butterfly. So next we're going to move on to our purple, and to create a seamless blend between the pink and the purple, I'm going to be double loading my brush, meaning I'm not cleaning it off. I still have the pink on my brush, and then I'm going to be grabbing a little bit of purple on it at the same time. And so what this is going to do, it's going to make it easier to blend both of the paints together on canvas, and it makes it easier to blend the paints this way. So I'm going to do it first on the right side, and then I'm going to keep on grabbing that purple on my brush, and I'm going to do the other side of the butterfly now. And you can just work that brush in the horizontal strokes, to blend it in a little bit as well. And in this part between the wings and the head where we have the antennas, I found it a little bit tricky to paint around the antennas, so I decided to take the path of least resistance and just paint over top of them, because the antennas are actually really easy just to paint in afterwards. And even with the paint here, you can actually see a little bit through the pencil marks still through it. So I decided to paint over it, and then we'll paint it in the later steps. And here also between the head and the body is where it got a little bit tricky to reach with my flat brush, so I switched over to my small round brush here. So for the remaining top part of the canvas, or the background, we're going to be picking up that brilliant purple and painting in the top of our canvas with that. So in the end, our background from the bottom to top, it's going to be that mix between the fluorescent pink and the white, that light pink. And then I've created a slightly darker shade of the pink by mixing in just a tad of the brilliant purple in with that light pink to create a medium pink. And then at the very top, it's that brilliant purple. Now, if you find your paint or your background is a little streaky and you want it to be more smoother and not see those brush strokes, I find one thing I like to do is just keep working that paint with my flat brush, and those horizontal strokes is the best I can. I find just working those lines out will smooth them out eventually. And I know it gets kind of tricky to do that between the wings because there's not as much space there. So you can always, what you can do is you can switch over. If you have a smaller flat brush, you can switch over to a smaller one if that makes it easier, or just use slightly smaller strokes, and that should do the trick. But again, if you're looking to get those smooth, a smooth background with not with no visible lines, then just keep working that paint, and eventually those lines will be smoothed out. So when you're happy with your background, you can leave it to dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to paint in our beautiful monarch butterfly. Now to paint in our monarch butterfly, I'm using two paint colors. So the top pile of paint is a mix between 1 part of cadmium red medium to 4 parts of cadmium yellow medium. And the bottom pile of paint is pure cadmium yellow medium. And now I'm just grabbing a medium size round brush. This one I believe is size 8. And I'm going to pick up some of that cad yellow on my round brush. And I'm going to be using a twisting motion to make sure it's fully loaded, the paint is fully loaded on the brush, and I'm going to be painting in a few sections that are towards the center of our butterfly, and not the whole section, just the beginning part of it, and basically the effect that will show at the end when this butterfly is fully painted is this yellow is going to look like it's radiating from the center of the butterfly into this gorgeous punchy orange color. And since yellow is quite translucent in nature, meaning it's a little bit see-through, you don't have to worry too much about covering up those pencil lines below. So even if you get some of that yellow paint over top of your sketch in those pencil lines, it'll show right through. So you don't have to worry too much about getting it really precise and not going over those pencil lines. So I just want to circle back to that orange mix I created earlier. Now, if you don't have that cad red and cad yellow at home, but let's say you have a pre-mixed orange, feel free to use that. Or if you have another type of red or another type of yellow, try to mix those two together to see if you can create an orange that you like. I always like to encourage fellow artists to use the paint colors they already have at home before going out to the store to buy new paint colors. This is both going to save you money and avoid buying paints that you might not use all that often. Alright, so now I'm going to be picking up some of that orange paint on the same round brush. Now I'm not cleaning off the brush before. I have still that cad yellow still left on it, and I'm just picking up that orange right away. And I'm just going to be painting in the rest of the portion of the sections of the butterfly wings. So here we're going to be painting in all of the sections, even the ones we didn't paint in with the yellow. And you're going to notice that the orange might look a little bit translucent because this is the first layer, and since that orange has the yellow mixed into it, it gives it a little bit of that translucent nature as well, meaning it's not going to be totally opaque. It's not going to give you that full coverage. So to fix that, what we're going to do is we're going to wait for this to dry, and by the time we actually finish all the sections, the ones we started out with will be dried, and we're going to go over it with a second coat of orange paint, and that's going to give us that opacity and also that vibrancy of that orange. It's going to bring it out even more. And just like with our yellow, you don't have to be worried about painting inside the lines and covering up your sketch. You can be a little bit free here, and even if some of the orange paint gets on your sketch and on those pencil lines, it's still going to be a little bit translucent by nature, so it won't fully cover it up, so you'll know where that black paint goes later on. So you don't have to worry too much about getting it exactly precise here. We just want to be make sure we fill in those sections with the orange and yellow paint. You also might notice that my paint is a little thinner. So these paints here are a little bit heavier bodied, and what I like to do is I like to thin them out before painting with them. So all I do is just add a bit of water right to that paint pile of paint on my palette, and I mix it in either with a palette knife or a paintbrush, and I try to get it to an optimal paint consistency that I like to work with. So I like to describe it as thick ink. And so basically, if you tilt your palette, you don't want the paint pile to run down. That's a little too thin, and it's going to get super transparent, and you're going to lose all its vibrancy and opacity. But you want the paint to still hold its form. Like you can see right now on the palette, it's still holding its form, but it's not big, heavy globs of paint. And having that optimal paint consistency really helps with blending paint, making sure your strokes are even and smooth and not bumpy. They won't dry with a bumpy texture. And also it helps with the drying time of your acrylic paint. So if you're working with layers, like we're going to be adding a second layer here, when you're working with thinner paints, they're going to dry super fast, so you can move on to that second layer pretty fast. But if I was working, for example, with a thicker paint and I didn't thin it down, then I might have to wait a little longer to get to my second layer of paint. So I just wanted to share that tip with you about that optimal paint consistency and why I use that. I find learning to work with acrylic paints and how to work with that perfect paint consistency and how to use your brushes optimally is a super important part of learning how to work with acrylics and painting with acrylics. And once you learn those really easy skills, it can really up your skill level and confidence with painting. And I've actually created a full course dedicated to working with your brushes, which goes to also how to load them properly with paint and also how to create that perfect paint consistency. So if you want to check that out, I'll put a link in the description below. All right, now we're on to our second layer of orange, as I mentioned before. Now, I wanted it to be a little bit more on the orange side. It was a little bit too red for me, so I'm adding just a little bit more of that cadmium yellow medium into my paint, my orange paint mix, and I'm just going to create a slightly lighter version of it. And it's just going to be a little bit more orange there. So once that's mixed, I'm going to be now using that same round brush we used for the first layer, and we're just going to basically go over all of the orange in our butterfly and just creating a second layer over top. And I forgot to mention, you want to make sure that the first layer of paint is fully dried before moving on to the second layer of paint. And you're going to notice as soon as you put on that second layer of orange over top of that first one, it's going to become more vibrant and more opaque, and it won't be as transparent as the first layer. And that's the key when you're working with these pigments that are a little bit on the translucent side, which are mainly your yellows and also sometimes oranges as well. Once they're mixed with that yellow, you want to make sure you want to add multiple layers over top to bring out that color and also to make sure it's opaque and not transparent. Now, another little trick, if you want to avoid doing too many layers, let's say you want to do one layer of a yellow and you want it to be opaque and vibrant, then what you can do is you can mix a little dab of titanium white right into your yellow to begin with. And what that's going to do, it's going to make that paint opaque and take away that transparent nature of that yellow. And then you can directly paint with that, and you're going to notice that it's going to be much less translucent than working with the yellow out of the bottle. So once you've painted in your second layer of orange paint, we're going to leave it to dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to fill in with our black paint around the border. Now, to fill in those borders around the orange in our butterfly wings, we're going to be using Mars Black and a smaller round brush. So here I'm using a size 6. Now, the key here to getting those really crisp borders and strokes and fine lines that go between the orange parts is to use that thin down paint consistency that I was talking about earlier. So you want to make sure that it's thin enough where when you grab it on your paintbrush, that it goes on really smooth and even, and you find like the paint almost just flows from your paintbrush. So you want to grab that paint onto your small round brush, and then you're going to start filling in the borders around the orange sections of your butterfly wing. And another tip when working with a small round brush to get those fine lines in between the orange sections and even on the outer edges is to apply a lighter pressure on your bristles and not to press down too hard. You basically want to let the tip of the bristles, that pointed tip, take the lead and then just gently sweep down. And that should help you get a little bit more crisper lines, a little bit more control over where your lines are going. So essentially you're going to be using your round brush and your black paint to fill in everywhere where we colored in with our pencil or filled in with our pencil in the drawing part of this tutorial. We're going to be filling it in now with the black paint. And I've also going to be filling in those small circles that we created at the top. I'm just going to go ahead and fill those in with black as well. And then after the black is dried, it's much easier to go over top and paint in white dots over top rather than trying to go around the circles. I found it just easier that way. So I'm just going to be going quiet for the remaining of the butterfly wings while I paint in the black portion, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to paint in our butterfly body. All right, now to fill in the body of the butterfly. So all we're going to do here is we're grabbing the same brush we used for filling in the wings, our small round brush, and we're just going to paint in the head of the butterfly with the same Mars black paint. And then we're going to be filling in the center part of the body again with that Mars black as well. And then in a later step, we're going to be adding some highlights on top of this Mars black. But for now, we're just laying the darkest color just to give the body the base layer. And then after that's a little bit dry, we can go ahead and add some highlights just to bring the body to life. Now for the bottom part of the body, we're just going to take those horizontal curved lines that we created in our sketch drawing with the pencil, and we're just going to go over those lines with our Mars black. So they're going to be kind of like stripes on the bottom part of the butterfly's body. And since we're working with a thinner black paint and we've thinned it down a little bit with water, the top head part should be dried by now and the middle body part should be getting there as well. So once we're done this bottom portion, we can actually move directly to the head without waiting for it to dry. So we're just going to, I've pre-mixed a little bit of gray, which is just a little bit of your Mars black with titanium white. So that's going to be creating a little bit of a light gray color, and I'm just going to be picking that up on the same brush that we used, and we're going to be adding a little bit of touch of a highlight on the butterfly's head and then also on the middle part of the body as well. So that's just going to give the illusion that there's light hitting it and it's almost like a 3D shape, which it is in real life. And then we're going to be painting in between those black stripes on the bottom part of the body. We're going to be filling it in with that same gray paint. So now we're going to be adding a little bit of a shadow to the bottom part of the butterfly body by using a little bit of Mars Black and painting in the the left half of the bottom part. And this is going to give the illusion that it's rounded and 3D. Now I'm going in and adding some eyes on either side of the butterfly's head, and since these are really small fine lines, I like to use just the very tip of the round brush when doing this, almost like you're using a pen tip, and where the ink is flowing just from the end of your pen, and when your paint is thin enough, it's just going to flow from the tip too. So that helps when you want to create those really small tiny details. Now for the antennas of the butterfly, and again we're going to be just using the very tip of the round brush, just like we did for the butterfly's eyes, and you're going to create those really fine lines. Now it actually took me, this is the third time I'm doing this, these antennas. They didn't quite work out the first two times, so I just want to let you know, because we often don't see what's happening behind the scenes and just end up seeing the end product and not the multiple fails it took someone to get it right. And this can actually feel a bit defeating. I've been there, especially when you can't get it right on the first go. So don't feel bad if it takes you a few extra times to get your antennas to look the way you want them to. Everyone struggles with these really fine lines and they can be really tricky. So, but the beauty of working with them, with acrylics, is that you can actually just wipe it clean with water. So what all I did was, I didn't like what the antennas were looking like, so I just took a paper towel and I just wiped it off of the canvas, and it just wipes off. As long as it hasn't dried on the acrylics, it can be wiped off easily with water. So you just simply wipe it off and then you can just repaint over top of it. And now I'm just putting some final highlight finishing touches on the eyes, on the head, and I'm going to be adding a little bit on the body as well. And here I'm using titanium white to create those final highlights on the butterfly body. To finish off our monarch butterfly, we're going to be adding small white dots along the border of our butterfly wings. So here I'm using the same small round brush I used earlier and titanium white paint that's been thinned down. I find working with a thinner paint is easier to make these dots. And also you want to use just the very tip of your round brush, just like we did in the antenna, and that's just going to create those small white dots really easily. Most of these dots are going to be small, but I'm going to be adding a little bit slightly bigger dots at the top right corner of the wings. And just go with the flow. There's no rhyme or reason where I'm putting them here or the placement. I found this part really relaxing and kind of got into Zen mode when making them. So enjoy this part, and I'll meet you back and we're going to create some awesome Q-tip clouds. Now that we're nice and relaxed after making our white dots, we're going to move on to creating some clouds with Q-tips. Now I find making clouds is a little bit tricky with a brush, and I found Q-tips worked brilliantly to create that fluffy, translucent look of clouds in a sky. I actually have another full painting dedicated to making Q-tip clouds, and I'm gonna put a link in the description below if you want to check that out. But essentially here I have a group of 4 to 5 Q-tips, and I have titanium white on my palette, and I'm just picking it up with the cotton buds, and I'm just lightly dabbing them in a cloud shape. And then I'm just filling it in, and you can see here that it's really soft and the outside edges are fluffy looking. So just go with the flow and make your clouds. There's no rhyme or reason again here the shape they have to be. You just kind of go with the flow here and create them, and then I'm going to show you how to make them a little bit more translucent to bring out the pink from the background after we're done filling in the clouds. Once you're happy with your cloud shapes and the paint is still wet, just take a small paper towel and slightly dab the bottom portion of your clouds to lift off some of that white. And what it's going to do is it's going to lift off some of that white, and that pink below it, it's going to show through, and it's going to give that effect of really translucent and soft clouds, which is the look that I was trying to achieve here. We're almost there. The last step of this painting is painting in our stars at the top of our canvas. So I'm just taking my small round brush and titanium white paint that's been thinned down with water, and I'm just going to add random stars, small stars, big stars, in a random pattern at the top portion of my canvas. And here too, you're free to create a crescent moon or even some shooting stars if you'd like as well. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed watching this monarch butterfly transform from a pencil sketch into a full of life and vibrant painting. For more step-by-step tutorials like this one, you can subscribe to this channel. And until next time, keep painting!